We are live from the ICC in Cape Town, the International Convention Center, and right behind me is where the proceedings will be unfolding. So this is the setup that has been made at the ICC, which somewhat resembles how the sitting in Parliament, the Parliament that we are used to, would be. And you have here, you have the number of seats for the various political parties, around 400 political party members that will be sworn in today. And then behind that you have all of the invited guests as well, who will be part of today's ceremony that will be taking place here at the ICC. It's a very historical moment, of course. And one of the conversations that we had a bit earlier on, Naledi, remember, was the decision to bring the first sitting of the National Assembly here to the ICC because Parliament doesn't have a venue. Ordinarily, for when both houses are sitting, we'd know that we'll have the City Hall being used, but it has been decided that this time around they will use the ICC. And let's actually bring into this conversation Masibulele Xaso, who's the National Assembly Secretary, who is joining us this morning. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us. Tumultuous time ahead, of course, but everything is set up.
Everything is set up. We are ready. Interesting times.
Yeah.
Important times for the country as well.
Speak to us about the decision to come here to the ICC to have the first sitting of the National Assembly here.
Firstly, as everyone knows, we do not have a building in Parliament that can accommodate this number of members, number of people. We used the City Hall before, but because it's a swearing-in ceremony and you need a bigger space for the arrangement, so it was felt appropriate to use this venue. It's just suitable for the type of occasion that we have.
Any idea of the number of guests that you're expecting today?
Well, what we know is that each member is allowed a guest, and political parties have been allowed 50 guests, and of course some stakeholders that we work with, whether it's the Electoral Commission, and any other stakeholder. So we would have such guests today. I don't have the exact numbers, but certainly that is the range that we're looking at. Yeah.
Speak to us about today's proceedings. What will happen at around 10 o'clock this morning?
10 o'clock, the Chief Justice will obviously start the proceedings. There will be the singing of the national anthem and the announcement of the sitting. That is in terms of the rules, in terms of the order that has been sent out already. And then we do the swearing in. We start with the swearing in of members because you must first constitute the House before it can conduct its business. So you do the swearing in of members, and the Chief Justice will announce the processes for the swearing in. Once all the members are sworn in, you then get to the election of office bearers. The first office bearer will obviously be the Speaker. If there is no contestation, one candidate, that person is declared elected. But if there is contestation, then we must break for the printing of the ballot papers. You can't print the ballot papers beforehand because you don't know the names yet. So you must wait for the nominations. Once you get the nominations, you can then start printing the ballot papers. We think that process will take us about 45 minutes for the printing of the ballot papers. We come back. We estimate that the whole thing should take us about 2.5 hours for the voting process because it's voting by secret ballot. And once the voting is done, Chief Justice, together with the returning officers, yesterday the returning officers took the oath of affirmation, so they are ready to assist the Chief Justice. And I think it's important to state that this election is conducted not by the IEC, but by the returning officers under the supervision of the Chief Justice. Mm-hmm. So we do the counting in a separate room. After the counting is done, we come back, Chief Justice announces the results, and the person is declared Speaker. In the event that you could have a situation where there is no one has got the majority of votes, of course you must do an elimination process until you can get, let's say you had more than 2 contenders. You must do an elimination process until you can get to 2 contenders, and of course you get to the contender who gets the most votes. The issue here is that it's about the number of votes cast, because the quorum, and it's important to explain this, the quorum for this type of sitting is 1/3 of members. So even if you had, let's say, 133 members, you will be able to proceed with this sitting because that's the quorum for this sitting. But we don't expect that. We expect good attendance. And so then the majority of the vote casts, and again, about the vote casts, it's about valid votes. So if you had spoiled votes, you would not count that. So the majority of votes.
Sorry, so does that mean the same rules that we normally would apply when it comes to a general election or any other election being conducted by the IEC, that those same conditions to determine whether a vote is a spoiled vote or not would also apply here?
It will apply. It will apply. The basic rules of voting will apply. So spoiled we won't be counted, but they will be declared. The Chief Justice will announce how many were spoiled, if there are any. We hope not. And of course, how many each candidate got. That will be, it's a transparent process. And of course, in terms of the rules, the material for voting must be sealed for a year. If anyone should want to access that, it can be done by order of court after that. So the same procedure. Okay, then after the Speaker, we then proceed to the election of the Deputy Speaker. That session is chaired by the Speaker. Then once that is done, same procedure is followed. Deputy Speaker is then elected. Now the House is is fully constituted. Members sworn in, office bearers in place. It can now conduct its other responsibilities, which includes the election of the President. In terms of how it is planned, we plan to start at 2 o'clock for the President, at 2 o'clock. But if there is voting in the morning, we may not make that 2 o'clock. But that is the intention. It's 2 o'clock, we would break ordinarily, because there will also be religious leaders blessing the House once it is constituted before the break. And then we proceed to the election of the President in the afternoon. Same procedure is followed for the election of the President. Nomination must be seconded, and the person nominated must accept. A form must be submitted, must be examined, and if it complies, then we proceed with the voting.
Yeah. And in terms of the printing of the ballot, how does that happen? Is it just a normal piece of A4 paper that you print the names on, or what's the procedure around that?
We will have a voters' roll, which is the membership list. Of course, we have ballot paper. We'll have ballot papers as well, that can be verified with an official mark, with a number. So it's a proper process, a proper ballot paper, but it's not like the one we had for the elections. But we'll see it when unfortunately, we don't have a ballot paper now, because we can only do them when we print. But it's a proper official ballot paper with all the names, and where members will be expected to put X next to the name that they prefer.
Speak to us quickly about plans that Parliament would have to have in place in case of a disruption. What are some of the rules that you've put in place to ensure that the proceedings today unfold as planned, to ensure that by the end of the day you do have a president who is elected?
The Chief Justice has formulated rules that we think are comprehensive enough to deal with such eventualities. You may be aware, and I think we should say this, that the rules were amended last night, just to expand the rules so that they are comprehensive to deal with any eventuality. So those rules also deal with issues of disruption in the event that there is a disruption in the process. We hope we won't get to that. It's a very important session, and there ought not to be disruption. But in the event that we did get to that point, the rules are comprehensive enough to deal with such. And it's important also to say that here we are not using the rules of the National Assembly for the election process and for the swearing in. We're using the rules of the Chief Justice. But of course, when we get to the time when the House is fully constituted and there are remarks by political parties at the end of the process, that is where then you would be able to apply the rules of the National Assembly, because the Speaker will be in the chair at that time, if we get to that point. But to answer you, the rules of the Chief Justice, as amended, are able to deal with all such eventualities.
And what happens to point of orders that we'd sometimes see coming from members of Parliament? Does it mean that once the Speaker has taken over, those powers are now vested within the MPs who have now taken the oath and have been sworn in to raise a point of order?
In any parliamentary proceeding, points of order are permitted. But of course, we always wish it could be just valid points of order, because there is a point of order, but there's something that is not a point of order. A point of order must relate to procedure. and to issues that arise at that point. You can't raise points of order about things that are happening elsewhere in the country. Raise points of order about things that are happening in the House.
Yeah, there were a number of amendments that have been made by a number of political parties, including the MK party. As it stands currently, do you know whether the MK party's 58 members will be attending today's proceedings?
We don't know. I didn't check this morning with the registration team, but we don't know yet. But all we have been saying is that we are open. And of course, we would have hoped that by yesterday, if arrangements were to be made by us, that we're made aware. But if we are called now to make arrangements for people to come, it's going to be nearly impossible. But to answer you, if members do come and if they would have registered, gone through the process, they will be in attendance. This is their house, after all. So that's really where things are at the moment.
That's really where things are at the moment. Thank you so much for your time. Masibulele Xaso, the National Assembly Secretary, on what is expected to happen later on today. And of course, as I said, that just after 2 o'clock, they hope that they'll be able to carry ahead with the election of the president.